In this video, we are going to get started with the project. And since I'm building this from the ground up, from square one is where we're going to build it, I'll be creating the project in this video, and then I'm going to add all of the dependencies. So every single one of the dependencies that we're going to be using in the project, and I'm just going to talk kind of briefly about each one. And I think this is just it's going to help save a lot of time throughout the course. Instead of adding a dependency here, adding a dependency there, I'm just going to add them all at once, and then later in the course when we run into situations where we're using certain parts of the app that use a particular dependency, then I'll stop and I'll point it out and I'll talk about it more. But yeah, so let's get started. So I've opened up Android Studio and I've selected create a new project. I'm going to select empty activity, go to next. I need to make sure I give it a correct name. So I'm going to name it Unit Testing 2. You can name it whatever you like. I'm going to name it Unit Testing 2. It is going to be a note-taking application, so you might want to name it something to do with keeping notes. The language is Java, minimum API 21, and I want to use Android X. Let's click Finish and let Android Studio build that project. All right, so the project is built. You can see we have just kind of main activity and we have activity main, very bare bones, nothing special here, just everything Android Studio has generated. Now I'm going to open up the build.gradle file and we're going to add all of the dependencies needed for the project. So you're going to want to head over to my GitHub page, the GitHub page for this project, which is github.com/mitchtabian unit testing 2. And let's go to the master branch, go to app, go to build.gradle, and I'm just going to copy pretty much, I think I can actually just copy the whole thing since I named the application the same. So I'm copying everything. Remember, if you named your application something different, you won't be able to do this, but I can because I named it the same. I'm going to click sync. It should give me an error because I actually need to add some other dependencies to the other build.gradle. Yeah, see, so there's the JUnit 5 installation giving me a warning. I'm going to paste everything in and then I'm going to go over it. So before I correct the error and show you how to correct the error, I'm just going to insert the correct dependencies. So I'm going to go to the highest level build.gradle file, which is in the main directory here. Go to build.gradle, and I need to copy this JUnit plugin. I guess you would call it a plugin right there. So I'm copying that, going to the application right here. I'm going to go to the top level build.gradle file and paste that in right there. And that's needed to use JUnit. So now let's try and resync that and see what happens here. All right, so there we go. It looks all good. So now I added a lot of dependencies and I didn't explain any of them. So let's first start by explaining how to install JUnit. So installing JUnit is, you can find the instructions on the JUnit 5 GitHub page. And as you know, or if you didn't know already, yes, we are using JUnit 5. We're not going to be using JUnit 4 for the bulk of this course. And if you want to know how to install JUnit 5, which is the newest version of JUnit, you can start by going to their GitHub page. So there is the link right there. And just like any other library, you're going to find instructions on how to install it just by scrolling down. So the Groovy, no, we don't want Groovy. We want the setup under here. Or we do want Groovy. That's I don't know what that's for. It's not what we want. We don't want Kotlin. We want this setup right here. So this is where the dependencies for the build.gradle app file need to go. So first you need to add this apply plugin to the build.gradle file, which you can see that we have. Let me just open up the project. That's added right at the top here. And then you want to add these other dependencies. So these ones are the required ones, and then you have an optional kind of section right here for something called parameterized tests. And of course, if you don't know what unit testing is and you've never done unit testing, you have no idea what parameterized tests are, but we are going to be using them. I'm going to show you how to use them. So you want to grab those dependencies and you want to paste those into the project. And if we scroll down, you'll see that I have them pasted in. Let's see. So local unit tests, use JUnit 5. And there's those 3 dependencies that I mentioned right there. And we're using version 5.3.2. If you want to know which version, it's actually 5.4.2 is out now. When I designed the course, we used 5.3.2. So if you want to stay consistent with what I'm going to be doing, I'm guessing there's going to be almost no difference, but I'm using version 5.3.2. Just kind of a heads up if you run into any random issues as you move along with the course. Now, there is one more thing that you need to do if you're using JUnit 5, which I don't actually see the instructions anywhere on here. So that's not a good thing as I'm just kind of browsing this. You need to add one more thing to the build.gradle project file, which is this right here. So that is the, I guess, Android plugin for JUnit 5. So make sure to add that. It's strange that I don't see that anywhere on the instructions. I'm sure it's here somewhere, but oh, it was right here in this groovy section that I collapsed earlier. So that goes into the build.gradle project file. So it does have all the instructions. This is build.gradle project. This is build.gradle app. So that's how you install JUnit 5, otherwise known as JUnit Jupyter on Android. Now, before we move forward, I want to spend just a few seconds here explaining something to you. So you might have heard me use two different terms when describing unit tests. You might have heard me say the term instrumentation test and local unit test. So you probably know that the local unit tests belong in the test directory and the instrumentation tests belong in the Android test directory. So there's some things you need to know about the build.gradle file regarding these two directories. Know that when you use the Android test implementation, I guess declaration you would call it, inside the build.gradle file, it means that this, whatever dependency is specified by this, will be used in the Android test directory. So JUnit, basically what this line is saying use JUnit 4 for the instrumentation tests. And it's the same for these ones down here. So it's saying use this dependency for instrumentation test, use this dependency for instrumentation test, use that for instrumentation test. And then when you come down to the local unit test section, the dependencies that you want to use for local unit tests, which will be the ones in this directory, you declare with the test implementation. So you have Android test implementation for instrumentation tests, and you have test implementation for the local unit tests. And as you know, as I've said several times before, we're using JUnit 5 for the local unit tests. So I'm using the test implementation directory, and we're going to be using JUnit 4 for the instrumentation tests. So that's why I'm using the Android test implementation declaration. And that brings me into a nice segue into these Android X dependencies. As you might have heard also in the very first video of this course, there's some things in JUnit 5 that don't work quite good enough with the Android framework yet. JUnit 5 is still pretty new, so there's still some things that need to be worked out. So that's why I'm using JUnit 4 for whatever little instrumentation tests that we will be doing in this course. And it's the Android X dependencies that don't work with JUnit 5, so that's why we're using them with JUnit 4 in the instrumentation tests. So in case that wasn't clear, again, just Android X we're using with JUnit 4. That's why they're declared with the instrumentation test declaration. JUnit 5 is going to be the local unit tests, and those are going to be used or declared with the test implementation. Coming down, we have Mockito. Mockito is going to be used for the local unit test, so that's why you can see that being declared as test implementation. And then as you come down, you have some other dependencies that you should probably be already familiar with. You have Dagger, obviously, hopefully you guys have taken my Dagger course. You have the Dagger Android imports. You have the material import, or the Google Android material dependency. That's going to be needed for recycler views and any kind of small material design stuff that we're going to be doing. You need this for if you're using Android X, which obviously we are using Android X. You have the Android X room dependencies. You have the room dependencies that allow you to return RxJava data types from room, because that's what we're going to be doing in the course. From the DAO class, so if you know anything about room, from the room DAO class, we're going to be returning RxJava observable objects. So that's why I have this this dependency here. View models and live data, obviously we're using MVVM architecture. The reactive streams import, so that's what's needed to convert observables to live data. So in other words, RxJava objects to live data, or live data to RxJava objects. The RxJava import, the Rx Android import, and then you have an Rx retrofit call adapter, which is not needed. I don't know why that's there. I'm going to delete that. We are not using retrofit in this course. So yeah, that's all of our dependencies. Hopefully you've had some experience with the last ones that I mentioned kind of here, and all the new stuff that I expect you to have no knowledge of is all of this testing stuff. So that's what we're going to be focusing on in this course. Also, as a side note, if you want to know more about the Android X side of testing, or the dependencies the Android X dependencies that are used for testing, you can go to this URL. So developer website, training, testing, setup project, and you have this setup project for Android X test. And you have all of the Android X dependencies, all the things you need to know about them. There's a whole bunch of them. We're not going to be using most of them, like I said, because we're only going to be focusing on local unit tests. But if you want to read and you want to know more, take a look at the documentation here. Now that I have all the dependencies, I'm going to get started building the project. And as you know from the previous videos the first two videos of the course, I'm going to be using test-driven development for this. So I'm going to be building this app kind of piece by piece and testing it as I go along. So build a small piece, build a test, build a small piece, build a test, and so on. So we're going to get started building that first small piece. Sorry, I forgot one thing. Before we move on, I want to let you know there's going to be a bunch of resources you need to add to the project, and I don't really want to waste time adding them on video, so I'm just going to tell you how to add them. So go to the source code, go to the resource directory, and you're going to want to add all the drawables. So download these drawables, like literally click on them, or sorry, add them. So like if you can add them, just copy paste them into the project. Some of them might actually be resources. I can't remember. Oh no, they're all vectors. So you can just copy paste them into your drawables. You need to add don't add all the layouts into the values. You need to add the colors. So make sure to add all these into your colors file. Add the strings. There's only a couple, so add those strings. And make sure the style matches mine also. So I'm going to be doing this off camera, so just make sure to do that and you should be good to go. I don't think there's anything else that you need to add. We don't need internet permissions. I don't think there's any MIP maps or anything. Yeah, so add the drawables, add everything in the values folder, and then you should have everything you need to start the project.